You know, there's this joke where someone goes to the rabbi and says, "Rabbi, can you tell me what the gist of your sermon is?" And the rabbi gives him the gist in about 30 seconds, and the guy goes, "So how come you didn't do that when you gave it?" So I'm going to give you the whole sermon in one word: disconnect. You can go home now. So it was 3 flights. 3 flights to get to, the last of which was a 12-passenger turboprop, so small we had to weigh ourselves before we got on the plane. That was reassuring. When we landed on the asphalt strip, on one side there was a cemetery, just in case the pilot missed, I guess, and on the other side there was the sea, the ocean, so if he missed, well, you haven't flown until you've landed next to a cemetery. That's all I can say. After that, we loaded ourselves into a Land Rover, took off across a rutted, storm-damaged dirt road, drove through rivers, not over rivers, through rivers, passed beneath monkeys tossing whatever it is that monkeys toss. You know what it is. We arrived at our lodge deep in the Costa Rican rainforest. The lodge that we went to was off the grid, off the grid. It was powered by a micro hydroelectric system, using the small rivers that flowed near the lodge to provide power all the time for the people who were there, which meant no air conditioning, no television, no internet, no telephones, and at night it was dark, really dark. There were lights, but I wouldn't call them bright. And cell phones, impossible to use. There was a satellite phone for emergencies, but luckily we had none of those. So I dragged my family with me for this first week of my sabbatical. What a way to begin. Talk about disconnection. We were away from everything. Now, I had no idea, the truth is I had no idea that this rainforest, some of you are saying better that they went than us, right? It was great. But I had no idea this rainforest adventure would actually would teach me the most important lesson about my 3-month sabbatical. I thought all I needed to do was configure my Outlook on my computer so it bounced email back to people who sent me email, and set my phone to refuse voicemail, and purchase that Rosetta Stone software that was going to be my mission for 3 months, learn Spanish. But all that wouldn't have really been enough if I hadn't started with that Costa Rican disconnection. Why? Because I think I didn't realize how connected I was, how connected we are. And I don't just mean cell phones and email, that's obvious, but I also am talking about my profession as a rabbi in the Jewish community. And I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, 21 of those years as a rabbi. And during that time of my 21 years in the rabbinate, I figured there are about 1,092 Shabbatot. 21 times 52, right? Makes sense. Now, during that time, I'd say that 80% of them were actually work Shabbatot. That's what rabbis do on Shabbat. It's the irony, right, that we end up working. And days off, when they came, were Wednesdays or Thursdays over the course of my career, were mostly about preparation for the week ahead, the upcoming events that we're following. And all days, regardless of what days they were, we're on call 24/7. So there's rarely a day in 21 years without some professional demand on my time, or any clergy person, really. And my wife will attest to the fact that often I literally stay up nights worrying about the future of the Jewish people and what it is that we need to do to strengthen people's commitment to Judaism. So to say that the life of a rabbi is all-consuming is pretty accurate. Cantor 2. So that's probably the reason that so many clergy people take sabbaticals every 7 or so years, if they're fortunate, as I was fortunate to receive. Now, I'm not telling you this to be impressed with my work ethic. Please don't be impressed with my work ethic, or feel sorry for me because I work so hard. Neither one of those two things are my goal. Because quite the contrary, I realize that probably many of you have the same experience, which is why I think this message resonates not just for the few of us in the room who are clergy, but also resonates for so many of us who are immersed in our professional lives, because that's what the culture is in this country today. And actually what I'm advocating is not more sabbaticals for me, although I certainly didn't mind the one I just had. I'm advocating the concept of more sabbaticals for all of us. Because the first break in our professional lives can't be retirement. That's too far away. It's nice, but it's too far away. So some thoughts about the sabbatical experience and sharing with you then what I learned from my sabbatical. The first thing I learned is it's really hard to disconnect. Really hard. And the second thing I learned was it's hugely important to disconnect from the patterns of one's life. But how do you do it? How do you turn off the world, so to speak? Now, one answer that I discovered is you step off the edge of the world in Costa Rica. But that only goes so far, and the truth is when I came back, the cell phones were turned on and the email was restarted. That can't be the only way. It's a good start, though. But in this highly connected world, we need to be thinking about how we're going to take time to really disconnect ourselves from the craziness that we're involved in. Because the world does everything it can to keep us connected. We have our BlackBerries, checking them first thing in the morning, checking them before we go to bed at night, all the time. We rarely shut out our professional worries and our demands because we're immersed in our careers. We dread telling the office, I'm not available. So instead, what do we say? Here's how you can reach me. Now think about that. We go on a vacation and we say to the office, here's the number you can use if you need to call me. That's not disconnecting. Even on vacations, we bring work along so we can get it done. We call into the office. We answer email. I'm on vacation, but. Or more like this, I'm on vacation, but. We keep work in our heads. How do we get it out for a while? And I'm going to argue that doing that, and by behaving in that way, we actually do pay a huge price. And it's not just the stress and the exhaustion that we feel sometimes, but it's also we're constantly distracted. My family can attest to that fact, and I denied it until I had these 3 months to think about it. We're distracted because we're always somewhere else. And when we're with our families, we only give them a percentage of our time because, after all, the BlackBerry's buzzing in our pocket, or we have to go check our email, or the phone's ringing, or something's happening to pull us away from where it is we want to be when we really, really trust our innermost desires. So that's why I'm saying we all need sabbaticals, and that in some way we deceive ourselves if we think we don't. Here's the good news. Sabbaticals in this world are increasingly not just for clergy or university professors. Companies like Adobe Systems, REI, Genentech, DreamWorks, Men's Warehouse. Yes, Men's Warehouse gives its employees sabbaticals. eBay, FedEx, Nike, General Mills. But it's not just large companies. A lot of small companies realize that it's in their best interest to give their employees sabbaticals because what they get in return are, when people return, are more productive and more efficient and more loyal employees.